Colin Cowherd,
Yeah.
the herd, is about to describe some things that I think a lot of us thought about this when we watched the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when you go to these combine meetings, teams give you things to challenge you. Teams will have a player's worst plays.
Nobody talked about this during the draft
show him his
itself,
worst
by the way.
plays.
No.
Say, hey, why don't you explain them? And Shedeur apparently didn't take to it well. And at one point, one of the few teams that actually was interested in him said, well, what do you make of this really bad play? And Shedeur said, maybe I'm not the guy for you.
Maybe I'm not the guy for you.
That's not the answer.
That's
Another
a really bad
move.
answer.
What they do during the film and the combine and the meetings is teams will install mistakes intentionally planted in the install, and they want you to catch them. Shedeur didn't, and when a coach called him out, once again, it didn't sit well.
These players got to get coached
not many
into how
teams
the
needing
interviews go,
quarterbacks,
man.
especially since Pittsburgh appears to have a deal with Aaron Rodgers and Tennessee's getting Cam Ward. So you're down to the Giants, who were not interested at all, and Cleveland, who traded out of that 2 spot because clearly they were looking for next year's class like the Rams are.
And that's where we're going, John. We're talking about next year's class. I think the way Cowherd set it up was absolutely perfect. But you had something you were going to say. What were you going to say?
No, I think that it is reasonable, Pete, for them to say, okay, rather than, everybody just telling you you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, what if somebody says, do you think you got room for improvement in this part of your game? Yes, the kid's got a cannon of an arm. He really does. Yep. And some people going into the draft were saying, well, he didn't throw, so we don't really know. Yeah, you did. If you watched his pro day, he could zip it 70 yards, just like all of them can be. Yeah. I mean, he's got the skills, but it's it's in his head and his attitude that I think is the issue. But let me let you go to next year's class of quarterbacks.
And I would say an attitude like he's shown so far is not an attitude that very many teams want to have because you can't have that, man. That's a disruption. If things go south, that's a big disruption in the future. All right, John, I just thought it's never too early to go up to next year's draft. So I put together a top 5 or 6 group. So here's what we've got. We've got Arch Manning. We got Nussmeier, who's down at LSU. Probably not a lot of people really are not familiar with him. Heck of a player, and this kid's got a great arm. This kid Sellers over at South Carolina has really been having a lot of people jump onto him, watching film on him. He's pretty special, John. And South Carolina has done a lot of things in a good way. Just building up that football program has been really impressive. Drew Allar at Penn State is special. I've stood next to this kid. He's as big as a house. He looks like a tight end. He can throw the ball. He can sling it. He can put it all over the place. The kid down at Clemson, Klubnik, is pretty interesting too. People forget about Clemson. I don't know why. Clemson still plays great football. They still have this great coach. They have players everywhere. He stays a lot away from the portal, so I think that does take Clemson away from some of the media coverage because of what they do and everything else. And then Carson Beck down at Miami, John, who's transferring from Georgia or transferred to from Georgia. This one, I think, is a pretty damn deep group, right? I mean, almost every name I put out there, I'd say even the casual fan is going to know who these guys are. Obviously, as we get into the season, others will probably join these guys. I think this might be as deep a quarterback class as we had last year. And I thought this year's was not as bad as everybody else. I actually thought we had some pretty damn good quarterbacks in there, including Shedeur. I think at some point he will be able to answer the bell, but he does need a little bit of work. But what do you think of that? And is there any names? Do you got any sleepers out there, John? I don't know. I looked around a little bit. I think there's a few, but that's a good list of quarterbacks, I think, for next year.
Yeah, and I think they all got a lesson from Shedeur, Pete. Yeah, so Arch Manning, I'm not saying that Arch, he's obviously got his father, his uncles that wouldn't let him go down that same road as Shedeur unfortunately chose to go down. Mm-hmm. You're a cocky kid, that's okay. If you back it up, that's okay. But then to disregard what the coaches are saying, like, well, when you look at this, Shedeur, do you see anything you might be doing wrong? Or how would you improve this? And you just say instead, maybe I'm not your guy. No, that's not the answer. And I don't think Arch will go down that road, Pete. Arch Manning down at Texas. And I think the one you really got to worry about, the one whose stock has fallen the most so far, is Nico out at UCLA.
Yeah.
He's going to really have to have a year, Pete, at UCLA, and he's going to have to take that either his ego or his dad's tutelage and throw them both away and just say, I'm a team guy.
Yep.
I'm going to do what's best for the team. And so forth and so on, rather than saying, well, I was only going to make 2.4 mil and I need to make 4. And now he's making a heck of a lot less than the 2.4 he would have made at Tennessee. And by the way, he's not on as good a team at UCLA. And he alone isn't the guy that's going to turn UCLA, Pete. So if that team ends up going, whatever, Pete, 6-7 or whatever it is, he is not going to get the same kind of looks that he had or that he would have got at Tennessee.
Yeah, I think bad tutelage from his father, and his father had a play in with his brother as well, who originally went to UCLA as his commitment. Then he decides to go to Arkansas. Then he comes back to UCLA, and then the UCLA quarterback who now goes to Tennessee. I mean, what a great trade that was for him. He probably is the happiest guy in the world. He's playing on one of the best teams in all of college football now. So not so bad for him. John, one last thing that I thought we could hit real quick was, so the NCAA, we obviously have this portal, and there are dates where the portal is open. And now this is the spring portal, obviously going on right now. But I had a couple of numbers for you that I thought you might find interesting. So West Virginia is one of them. The exodus leaving West Virginia and a fairly historic coach, 25 players have already hit the portal in the springtime. 25. There's only, let's say there's 100. There might be because of walk-ons and whatever else, but you got 100 players out there. 25 of them say, well, I'm out of here. Auburn, same problem. 21 guys have left. Stanford, they not only lost a lot of players, John, somewhere in the 20s, but the new GM actually fired the head coach, Troy Taylor. So not only are they losing guys to the portal, they're losing guys that they had to fire. So Stanford's up in the air right now in the ACC, only followed by Cal, who lost 5 running backs to the portal and 18 offensive players to the portal. So and you know what? And you can't always read into it because maybe they were okay with these guys leaving. Maybe they weren't right for Cal or for Stanford or whatever school it is. But it is amazing to see, John, how these guys, they just start going for the doors and they're moving on and looking for another NIL payday or whatever it is. I hope in most cases they're just going somewhere where they have a better opportunity to play. If they're doing it for that reason, I get it. But if they're doing it for money, or they're trying to, do it for whatever other reasons come up, I just think that they're using this portal. They're overusing the portal. And can you imagine being a head coach at Cal and all of a sudden you've got 20 plus of your offensive players walk away to the portal? I mean, holy crap.
Yeah, well, Pete, I looked at some data, and the data shows that up to 25%, in other words, 1 in 4 players on a college football team are considering the portal. Now, that is, given that you're talking roughly in rough numbers, Pete, 95 or 100 players on a team, you're talking about 25 players. And for the most part, most of those players are either starters or sharing time with somebody else. There are a few of them that are leaving because they're not getting any playing time. And we both agree with that. I think that they should then try to go someplace where they think they can play. But for the starters and or the ones sharing time, or like you said, just people like Nico that thought that they could get more money, that, some team out there would pay him a lot of money. And by the way, Pete, nothing against Nico, but he is a little skinny dude.
Yeah.
He needs to get in the weight room. He needs to put on some weight. And because I don't think that guy can make it through an NFL season with those skinny little arms and everything else. Yeah. He was able to play very high level at a great team. We'll see if he can play high level at a not so great team at UCLA.
Yeah, far more average team than great. Tennessee was unbelievable last year. Look at how many guys got drafted and everything. By the way, the last thing I'll say on the portal, when you decide you're going in the portal, John, you've basically told your scholarship, rip. And if you don't get picked up, now what? Right? I mean, so there's a gamble there that these guys are willing to take that I think is a little bit crazy because you know what? Sometimes you don't realize what you've got until you lose it. And that's a problem.
Yeah, and those scholarships, folks, are $70,000 to $100,000 per year, because again, despite NIL and them getting paid, they're also getting free school, room and board, and probably books and everything else. So,
Unreal.
Anyway,